Captain Lee Daho stood on the bridge of the UES Titan's Wrath and looked out at the stars. The massive ship floated quietly in the shipyard above Earth. Workers in small repair ships moved around its hull like tiny insects. They were putting the final touches on the biggest warship humanity had ever built. The ship was 8 kilometers long. It was so big that people called it a flying city. But to the aliens who watched from far away, it looked like something else. They thought it was ugly and too big. They laughed at humans for building such a thing. "Sir, we're getting a message from Admiral Park Soman," said Commander Kim Tae-woo. He was standing at the communication station. His face looked serious. Lee walked over to the main screen. The image of Admiral Park appeared. She was an older woman with gray hair and sharp eyes. She had been fighting for humanity for 30 years. "Captain Lee," she said, "we have a problem. The colony on New Busan is under attack." Lee felt his stomach drop. New Busan was a peaceful farming world. They grew food for 3 other human colonies. The people there were families with children. They had no weapons to fight with. "Who's attacking them?" Lee asked. "The Krex hegemony," Admiral Park said. "Warlord Vextar is leading the attack himself. He says humans need to learn their place in the galaxy." Lee's hands became fists. The Krex hegemony controlled 60 star systems. They thought they owned the galaxy. They had been pushing human colonies around for months. The Galactic Council always said they would look into it, but they never did anything. "What are our orders?" Lee asked. Admiral Park was quiet for a moment. "The Council wants us to send a small force. They say we should not make the hegemony angry. They want us to negotiate." Lee knew what that meant. The Council was afraid of the hegemony. They would let human colonists die to keep the peace. "But I have different orders for you," Admiral Park continued. "Take the Titan's Wrath to New Busan. Show them what happens when they attack our people." Lee smiled. "Yes, ma'am." The screen went dark. Commander Kim looked at his captain. "Sir, intelligence says there are 40 hegemony ships at New Busan. 3 of them are dreadnoughts." "Good," Lee said. "They won't be expecting much of a fight." Dr. Choi Yu-jin entered the bridge. She was the ship's science officer. She studied alien species and how they thought. "Captain, I've been reading the hegemony reports about our ship. They think it's just a big, dumb transport." "What else do they think?" Lee asked. "They think we built it big because our technology is bad. They say humans always try to make up for being weak by building bigger things." Lee laughed. "Let them think that." On the other side of the galaxy, Warlord Vextar stood on his command ship above New Busan. The planet below was burning in several places. His ships had destroyed 2 cities already. The humans were hiding underground like scared animals. "My lord," said General Quindal, "our spy networks report that the humans are sending a response." Vextar was a large creature with 4 arms and gray skin. His race had been warriors for thousands of years. They believed that only the strong deserved to live. "How many ships?" Vextar asked. "1 ship, my lord." Vextar laughed. The sound was like rocks grinding together. "1 ship. These humans are even more foolish than I thought." "It's their largest vessel," Quindal said. "Something called the Titan's Wrath." "I don't care if they call it the God's Fist," Vextar said. 1 ship against 40? We will crush it and then finish destroying this pathetic colony. The galaxy will see what happens to those who challenge the hegemony." Back on the Titan's Wrath, engineer Kang Min-soo was working in the deep parts of the ship. The engine rooms were bigger than most alien ships. They hummed with power that could light up a small city. But the engines were not the ship's real secret. Kang walked through long hallways lined with closed doors. Behind each door were thousands of fighter ships. The Titan's Wrath was not just a big ship. It was a carrier that could launch more fighters than most alien fleets had total ships. Lieutenant Yoon Hai-won was in the pilot-ready room with her squadron. They were the best fighter pilots in the human fleet. They had trained for years to fly the most advanced ships ever built. "Listen up," Yoon said to her pilots. "Intelligence says we're going up against Krex fighters. They're fast but not very smart. They like to fly in straight lines and shoot big guns." One of her pilots raised his hand. "Ma'am, what about their numbers?" "Numbers don't matter if they can't hit us," Yoon said. "Our fighters can dance around theirs like they're standing still." The pilots laughed. They had confidence that came from flying ships that were 50 years ahead of anything the aliens had. Captain Lee walked through the ship's corridors. Everywhere he looked, his crew was getting ready for battle. They moved with quiet confidence. They knew something the aliens did not know. Humans had been building and fighting for thousands of years. They had learned to work together like no other species in the galaxy. When humans went to war, they did not just send ships. They sent weapons that could think and adapt and change during battle. The Titan's wrath began to move. Its engines came to life with a deep rumble that could be felt through the entire ship. The massive vessel slowly turned away from Earth and pointed toward the stars. In space, the ship looked like a floating mountain. But appearances could be deceiving. Inside its hull were systems that no alien had ever seen. Manufacturing plants that could build new fighters during battle. Repair systems that could fix damage faster than it could be done. Weapons that could learn and improve with each shot fired. Dr. Choi looked at the star chart showing their destination. New Busan is 3 days away at maximum speed, she told Captain Lee. Then we'll be there in 2 days, Lee said. The colonists have waited long enough. As the ship jumped into hyperspace, the stars outside stretched into lines of light. The Titan's wrath was going to war. The Krex hegemony thought they were about to destroy one foolish human ship. They were about to learn that they had made the biggest mistake in galactic history. The Titan's wrath moved through hyperspace like a giant metal whale swimming through an ocean of stars. Captain Lee Daeho walked the halls of his ship and watched his crew prepare for battle. They moved with calm purpose. No one seemed worried about facing 40 enemy ships. Dr. Choi Yu-jin was in the briefing room with the senior officers. She had pictures of Krex aliens on the wall screens. They looked like giant lizards with 4 arms and thick gray skin. The Krex think strength is everything, she explained. They believe that if you can't fight, you don't deserve to live. They've been the strongest race in the galaxy for 300 years. Commander Kim Tae-woo studied the images. What about their fighting style? They like direct attacks, Dr. Choi said. They charge straight at their enemies with big guns blazing. They think tactics are for the weak. That's good for us, Kim said. Our fighters are built for hit-and-run attacks. Lieutenant Yoon Hai-won leaned forward. What about their ships? Fast and heavily armed, Dr. Choi said. But they have one weakness. They can't change plans quickly. Once they decide on an attack, they stick with it even if it's not working. In another part of the ship, Engineer Kang Min-soo was checking the fighter launch systems. The Titan's Wrath had 50 launch bays. Each bay could send out fighters every 30 seconds. But that was just the beginning. Hidden deep in the ship were manufacturing centers. They could build new fighters while the battle was happening. As long as the ship had power and raw materials, it could keep sending out fighters forever. Kang walked into one of the manufacturing areas. Robots were building fighter ships with incredible speed. A new fighter rolled off the assembly line every 2 minutes. The aliens had no idea this was possible. The Krex had been watching the human ship approach for 2 days. General Quindal stood beside Warlord Vextar on the bridge of their command ship. They could see the Titan's wrath on their screens. It looked huge but slow. It's bigger than our intelligence report said, Quindal noted. Size means nothing without proper weapons, Vextar replied. Look how slowly it moves. Our fighters will dance around it like predators around wounded prey. The hegemony fleet was spread out in perfect formation. 3 massive dreadnoughts formed the center. Around them were 37 smaller ships. Each ship had enough firepower to destroy a city. My lord, a communications officer said, the human ship is sending a message. Put it on screen, Vextar ordered. Captain Lee's face appeared on the screen. He looked calm and confident. This is Captain Lee Daeho of the UES Titan's Wrath. You have attacked human colonists. Leave this system now or face the consequences. Vextar laughed so hard his forearms shook. Human, you have 1 ship. We have 40. Surrender now and we might let some of your crew live. I don't think so, Lee said. The screen went dark. Foolish humans, Vextar said. All ships attack formation. We'll destroy them quickly and get back to finishing off the colony. The Titan's Wrath dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the new Busan system. It was alone, just as the Krex expected. The massive ship slowly turned to face the enemy fleet. On the Titan's Wrath bridge, Commander Kim was watching his instruments. Sir, they're moving to surround us. Classic Krex tactic, let them, Captain Lee said. Lieutenant Yoon, launch first wave. Yes, sir, Yoon replied. She was already in her fighter, waiting in the launch bay. The first launch bay opened. 50 human fighters poured out of the Titan's Wrath. They were sleek and fast like silver arrows shooting through space. General Quindal watched the launch on his screens. Only 50 fighters? Is this some kind of joke? Maybe they're holding back their main force, an officer suggested. There is no main force, Quindel said. Intelligence says this ship carries maybe 200 fighters at most. They're trying to make us think they're stronger than they are. The Krex fleet moved closer. Their ships were painted in dark colors with sharp edges. They looked like weapons built for war. The hegemony had been building ships like this for centuries. Lieutenant Yoon led her fighters toward the enemy. Her squadron was spread out in a loose formation. They moved in 3 dimensions, using the full space around them. Remember, Yoon said over the radio, we're faster and smarter. Use that. The Krex fighters came to meet them. They flew in tight groups, shooting everything they had. Their weapons lit up space with bright flashes. But the human fighters danced between the shots like leaves in the wind. Yoon locked onto a Krex fighter and fired. Her weapon was different from theirs. Instead of just exploding, it adapted to the enemy's shields and found the weak spots. The Krex fighter came apart in a ball of fire. On the hegemony command ship, alarms started going off. The first exchange had lasted only minutes, but they had lost 12 fighters. The humans had lost none. How is this possible? Vextar demanded. Their weapons seem to be more advanced than we thought, Quindel said. It doesn't matter. Send more fighters. Overwhelm them with numbers. But as more Krex fighters launched, something strange started happening on the Titan's Wrath. Parts of the ship that had looked like solid hull began to open. More launch bays appeared and more fighters poured out. Engineer Kang was watching the battle from the ship's command center. All systems running perfectly, he reported. Manufacturing rate at 110%. Captain Lee nodded. Second wave launch. Another 100 fighters shot out of the Titan's Wrath, then another 100. The Krex had expected to face 200 human fighters total. Now there were already 400 in space and more were coming. This is impossible, Vextar roared. No ship can carry that many fighters. Unless, Quindel said slowly, they're not just carrying them. Unless they're making them. Dr. Choi was monitoring alien communications from the science station. Sir, I'm picking up panic in their radio chatter. They're starting to realize what they're facing. The human fighters moved like a swarm of angry bees. They attacked from all directions at once. The Krex fighters, used to direct combat, couldn't adapt to the 3-dimensional battle the humans were fighting. Yoon's squadron had destroyed 30 enemy fighters without losing a single pilot. Her fighters could repair themselves during battle, fixing damage faster than the Krex could cause it. All squadrons, prepare for Phase 2, Captain Lee announced over the ship's communication system. Phase 2 was something the Krex had never seen before. The Titan's Wrath stopped looking like a normal ship and started looking like what it really was. A mobile weapons platform that could build its own army. More sections of the hull opened. Point defense weapons emerged from hidden compartments. Shield generators that had been invisible suddenly lit up with power that made the Krex sensors scream warnings. My lord, an officer said to Vextar, that ship's power output just increased by 500%. Vextar stared at the screens. The human ship had not just been hiding its fighters. It had been hiding everything. Its real weapons, its real shields, its real purpose. What have we done? Quindel whispered. The answer came as wave after wave of human fighters continued to pour from the Titan's Wrath. The Krex had thought they were attacking one ship. Instead, they had found humanity's secret weapon, a ship that was really a fleet disguised as a single vessel. The battle was just beginning, and the hegemony was already starting to lose. Captain Lee Daeho stood on the bridge of the Titan's Wrath and watched the enemy fleet on his screens. The Krex ships were trying to form a new battle line, but his fighters were making it impossible. Every time they grouped together, the human pilots would strike and scatter them again. Commander Kim, Lee said, how many fighters do we have in space? 450, sir, Kim replied. And we're launching 50 more every minute, Lee nodded. It was time to show the Krex what they were really fighting. All stations prepare for full deployment. The words went out across the ship's communication system. In hundreds of launch bays, pilots who had been waiting for hours finally got their orders. This was what they had trained for. Launch all fighters, Lee commanded. What happened next was something the galaxy had never seen before. The Titan's Wrath opened like a flower made of metal and fire. Launch bay after launch bay revealed itself along the ship's hull. Fighters poured out in streams of silver light. Lieutenant Yoon Hai-wan was already in the battle, but she stopped fighting for a moment to watch. Even she had never seen the ship's full power before. Beautiful, she whispered. The fighters came out in perfect formation. They moved like a single living thing with thousands of parts. Each pilot knew exactly where to go and what to do. They had practiced this dance 1,000 times. On the hegemony command ship, alarms were screaming. General Quindal stared at his screens in horror. The numbers kept climbing. 500 human fighters, 700, 1,000. This is not possible, Vextar said. His voice was quiet now. The laughing had stopped, sir, a technician called out. Long-range sensors are detecting manufacturing activity inside the human ship. They're building new fighters during the battle. Quindal felt his blood turn cold. How many can they build? Unknown, sir. The energy readings suggest they could continue indefinitely as long as they have power and materials. Vextar realized what this meant. They were not fighting a ship. They were fighting a mobile factory that could produce an army while it fought. Commander Kim was coordinating the swarm from the Titan's wrath. Each fighter pilot could see where every other pilot was. They moved together like they shared one mind. Squadron leaders report, Kim said into his headset. Blue Squadron ready, came Yoon's voice. 200 fighters in formation. Red Squadron ready, another voice said. 150 fighters standing by. Green Squadron ready. 300 fighters in attack position. The reports kept coming. By the time all the squadrons had checked in, there were over 800 human fighters in space. And more were still launching. Dr. Choi Yu-jin was monitoring the Krex communications from her science station. Captain, they're trying to call for reinforcements, but their messages are full of panic. I don't think their commanders believe what they're seeing. Down on the planet New Busan, human colonists were hiding in underground shelters. They had been under attack for 3 days. Many of them thought they were going to die, but now they could see flashes of light in the sky above them. The sounds of bombing had stopped. Through the small windows of their shelters, they could see something that filled them with hope. A little girl named Park Mi-young pressed her face against the glass. Mommy, look. The pretty lights are fighting the bad ships. Her mother, Dr. Park Sun-hee, looked up and saw the battle raging overhead. Human fighters were everywhere, moving like shooting stars. The Krex ships that had been bombing their cities were now running away. Help has come, she whispered. Back in space, the battle had turned into a rout. The Krex fighters were fast, but they could not handle fighting in 3 dimensions against so many enemies. They were used to simple battles where 2 fleets charged at each other. The human fighters attacked from above, below, and all sides at once. They came in waves that never stopped. As soon as one group finished its attack run, another group was ready to strike. Yoon led her squadron against one of the Krex dreadnoughts. The massive ship was the size of a small city. Its armor was thick and its weapons were powerful, but it was slow and could not turn quickly. All Blue Squadron pilots, Yoon said. Attack pattern Delta. Hit them where they can't shoot back. Her fighters spread out and came at the dreadnought from all directions. They moved too fast for the big ship's guns to track them. Their weapons found weak spots in the armor and exploited them. The dreadnought tried to fight back, but it was like a giant trying to swat flies. Every time it turned to face one group of attackers, another group would hit it from behind. Engineer Kang Min-soo was deep in the ship, watching his manufacturing systems work. The robots never stopped building. As soon as one fighter was complete, they started on the next one. The assembly lines moved like they were alive. Manufacturing rate at 120%, he reported to the bridge. We can maintain this pace for at least 6 hours. But the battle would not last 6 hours. It was already clear that the Krex fleet was beaten. Half of their fighters had been destroyed. 2 of their dreadnoughts were badly damaged. The third was trying to retreat. Warlord Vextar watched his fleet fall apart around him. His warriors, who had never lost a battle, were running away in panic. The humans had turned space combat into something he did not understand. My lord, Quindal said, we must retreat. If we stay, we will lose everything. No, Vextar said. The hegemony does not retreat. We fight until we win or die. Then we will die, Quindal said. Look at the numbers. We are fighting over 1,000 human fighters now, and they keep coming. On his screens, Vextar could see the truth. The human fighters moved like they were controlled by a single intelligence. They never made mistakes. They never got tired. They just kept attacking with perfect coordination. Captain Lee was watching the battle from his bridge. His fighters had complete control of the space around New Busan. The Krex fleet was broken and scattered. Sir, Commander Kim said, the enemy is trying to regroup around their command ship. Let them try, Lee said. All squadrons prepare for final assault. Dr. Choi looked up from her instruments. Captain, I'm reading massive power buildup from the planet's surface. The Krex ground forces are preparing to bombard the civilian shelters. Lee's face went hard. They want to kill innocent people because they're losing the battle in space. What are your orders, sir? Kim asked. Show them why that was a mistake, Lee said. All fighters, new target. Protect the colonists. The swarm of human fighters changed direction like a flock of birds. They dove toward the planet's surface, moving faster than the Krex ground weapons could track them. The aliens on the ground had thought they were safe. They had heavy weapons and strong positions. But they had never faced an attack from space by 1,000 fighters working together. In minutes, the Krex ground forces were destroyed. The weapons that had been pointed at civilian shelters were now smoking ruins. The colonists were safe. Little Mi Young pressed her face against the shelter window again. Mommy, the pretty light saved us. Her mother held her close and looked up at the stars, where human fighters were still dancing through space like guardian angels. The Krex fleet was finished. Most of their ships were destroyed or fleeing. The few that remained were trying desperately to escape the system, but Captain Lee was not done with them yet. The space around New Busan was filled with wreckage. Pieces of Krex ships drifted slowly through the darkness, glowing from the fires that still burned inside them. But Captain Lee Daeho was not satisfied with just winning the battle. Commander Kim, he said, how many enemy ships are trying to escape? Kim checked his instruments. 12 ships, sir. They're heading for the hyperspace jump point. Not today, Lee said. All squadrons pursue and destroy. Don't let any of them get away. Lieutenant Yoon Haewon was refueling her fighter in one of the Titan's Wrath launch bays when the new orders came through. She smiled as she climbed back into her cockpit. You heard the captain. Let's go hunting. The human fighters spread out across the star system like a net. The fleeing Krex ships were fast, but the human fighters were faster. And there were so many of them that escape was impossible. Warlord Vextar was aboard his flagship trying to reach the jump point. His ship was one of the fastest in the hegemony fleet. But when he looked at his rear sensors, he saw dozens of human fighters closing in on him. More power to the engines. He roared at his crew. We're already at maximum, my lord, the engineer replied. The engines cannot take any more. General Quindal was studying the tactical display. Sir, the human fighters are not just faster than us. They're working together to cut off all our escape routes. It was true. The human pilots had split into groups that moved like the fingers of a closing hand. Every time a Krex ship tried to change direction, human fighters were already there waiting. One by one, the fleeing ships were caught and destroyed. The human fighters attacked with deadly precision. They aimed for engines first, stopping the ships from running. Then they would target weapons and life support. But something else was happening that shocked the Krex even more. When human fighters were damaged in the pursuit, they would return to the Titan's Wrath for repairs. The massive ship had automated repair systems that could fix fighters faster than they could be damaged. Engineer Kang Min-soo was monitoring the repair systems from his control center. Damaged fighters coming in on levels 7 through 12, he announced. Estimated repair time, 8 minutes per fighter. The repair bays were marvels of human engineering. Robot arms moved with incredible speed, replacing damaged parts and refueling weapons. The fighters that went in looking like they had been through a war came out looking brand new. But the real surprise was yet to come. Dr. Choi, Yujin was picking up long-range communications from the edge of the star system. Captain, I'm detecting hyperspace signatures. Multiple ships approaching. On the main screen, more human ships began to appear. Admiral Park So-min had arrived with the rest of the fleet. 5 more carriers, each one smaller than the Titan's Wrath but still massive. Dozens of support ships. And 3 dreadnoughts that made the Krex ships look like toys. Vextar watched the new arrivals appear on his sensors and felt something he had never felt before. Complete despair. How many ships do these humans have? Unknown, my lord, Quindal said. But it appears we have been fighting just one ship from a much larger fleet. Impossible. Our intelligence said humans were weak. They said human technology was primitive. Our intelligence was wrong, Quindal said quietly. Admiral Park's face appeared on communication screens throughout the human fleet. She looked calm and confident, like someone who had expected this result all along. "This is Admiral Park So-min to all ships," she said. "The Titan's Wrath has done excellent work here, but I want to make sure our message is clearly understood across the galaxy." The Admiral's additional ships spread out in perfect formation. Each one was bristling with weapons and launching its own fighters. The space around New Busan, which had been filled with hundreds of human fighters, now contained thousands. On his flagship, Vexatar realized that the humans had never been in any real danger. The Titan's Wrath could have handled his entire fleet alone. The additional ships were just there to make a point. "Open a channel to the human admiral," he ordered. Park's face appeared on his screen. She looked at him like he was an interesting but dangerous animal. "Warlord Vextar," she said. "You attacked our colonists. You thought we were weak. We made an error," Vextar said. It was hard for him to admit. "The Krex never apologized for anything." "Yes, you did," Park said. "You made the error of thinking that because we're new to the galaxy, we don't know how to fight. You're about to learn just how wrong you were." Down on New Busan, the colonists were emerging from their shelters. The bombing had stopped completely. In the sky above them, they could see hundreds of lights moving in perfect patterns. The human fleet was protecting them. Dr. Park Sun-hee led her daughter Mi-young out of their shelter. The little girl pointed up at the sky with excitement. "Look, Mommy, the pretty ships are everywhere." "Yes, dear," Sun-hee said. "They came to save us." Other colonists were coming out of hiding too. They had lost homes and friends in the Krex attack. But they were alive and help had come from the stars. Back in space, the hunt was nearly over. Only 3 Krex ships were still trying to escape. Vextar's flagship was one of them, but human fighters surrounded it on all sides. Lieutenant Yoon led the final attack on a Krex dreadnought. The massive ship was damaged and slow, but it was still dangerous. Its weapons could destroy a fighter with one hit. "All pilots attack pattern Omega," Yoon commanded. "Hit it from 6 directions at once." Her fighters came in like arrows shot from a giant bow. The Krex ship tried to fight back, but it was overwhelmed. Within minutes, it was drifting powerless in space. Engineer Kang was amazed by how well his systems were working. "All manufacturing lines operating at peak efficiency," he reported. "We've built and launched over 1,500 fighters during this engagement." Captain Lee nodded. The Krex had thought they were fighting against a single ship with a limited number of fighters. Instead, they had found themselves battling a mobile factory that could build new fighters faster than they could destroy them. "Sir," Commander Kim said, "the last enemy ships are surrendering." "Good," Lee said. "Have them power down their weapons and prepare to be boarded." But Warlord Vextar had one last desperate plan. If he could not escape, he would at least try to damage the human fleet. He ordered his ship to ram the Titan's Wrath. "My lord." "That's suicide," Quindal protested. "Better to die as a warrior than live as a failure," Vextar replied. His ship turned toward the massive human carrier and accelerated. But the humans had been monitoring his communications. They knew what he was planning. The Titan's Wrath did not try to run. Instead, it did something that shocked everyone watching. Point defense weapons emerged from hidden positions all over its hull. The massive ship was not just a carrier. It was also the most heavily armed fortress ever built. A wall of defensive fire met Vextar's ship. The Krex flagship, which had seemed so powerful at the beginning of the battle, was torn apart before it could reach its target. Vextar died believing he had been defeated by superior numbers. He never understood that he had really been beaten by superior technology, tactics, and teamwork. The Battle of New Busan was over. The Krex hegemony fleet was destroyed, but the real consequences were just beginning to spread across the galaxy. The silence after the battle was strange. Space around New Busan was filled with the wreckage of the Krex fleet, but the human ships floated quietly among the debris. Captain Lee Dae-ho stood on the bridge of the Titan's Wrath and watched his fighters return home. They came back in perfect formation, just as they had left. But now the entire galaxy would know what these ships could do. The secret was out. "All fighters recovered," Lieutenant Yoon Hai-wan reported. She looked tired but satisfied. "0 casualties, sir," Lee nodded. That was the most important number. His people had gone into battle against impossible odds, and every single one of them was coming home alive. Commander Kim Tae-woo was monitoring communications from across the galaxy. "Sir, news of the battle is spreading fast. Every major government is talking about it. Down on New Busan, the colonists were working to rebuild their damaged cities, but now they worked under the protection of the human fleet. Dr. Park Sun-hee was helping coordinate relief efforts when she received a message that made her smile. Mi-young, she called to her daughter. The captain of the big ship wants to meet you. Little Mi-young had drawn pictures of the battle with her crayons. In her drawings, the human fighters looked like angels with bright wings. She had written at the bottom, "Thank you for saving us." Captain Lee arrived on the planet's surface with a small team. When he saw Mi-young's drawings, he knelt down to her level. "These are beautiful," he said. "Can I keep one?" Mi-young nodded shyly and handed him her favorite drawing. "Will the pretty ship stay to protect us?" "For as long as you need us," Lee promised. But protection for New Busan was just the beginning. Admiral Park So-min was already planning the next phase. She called a meeting of all the human fleet commanders via secure communication. "The galaxy has seen what we can do," she said. "Now we need to decide what we do next." The admirals appeared on screens throughout the fleet. They represented the best military minds humanity had ever produced. "Admiral," said one commander, "the Galactic Council is requesting an emergency meeting. They want to discuss the New Busan incident." Park smiled coldly. "An incident? 40 Krek ships attacked our colonists and we destroyed them. I'd call that justice." Dr. Choi Yu-jin was in her science lab studying the wreckage of Krek ships. What she found confirmed what she had suspected. "Captain, their technology is at least 50 years behind ours. Maybe more. How is that possible?" Lee asked. "They've been the dominant power for centuries." "That's exactly why," Choi explained. "When you're always winning, you stop trying to improve. They've been using the same ship designs and tactics for generations." Meanwhile, across the galaxy, the news was causing panic in some places and celebration in others. Species that had been oppressed by the Krek's hegemony were suddenly hopeful, but the powerful governments were afraid. On the Krek's homeworld, the surviving leaders of the hegemony were meeting in emergency session. General Quindal had escaped the battle in one of the few ships that had jumped away before the human fleet arrived. "Tell us again," demanded the High Warlord. "How many human ships did you face?" "At first we thought it was just one," Quindal said. "But that one ship carried over 1,000 fighters, and it was building new ones during the battle." "Impossible." "I saw it with my own eyes," Quindal insisted, and then more human ships arrived. "We were not fighting a single vessel. We were fighting their entire fleet." The High Warlord was quiet for a long time. Finally he spoke. "How many ships like that do they have?" "Unknown," Quindal said. "But if they can build one, they can build hundreds." The truth was even worse than they feared. Engineer Kang Min-soo was already working on designs for the next generation of human carriers. Ships that would make the Titan's wrath look small. The Galactic Council met in emergency session on the neutral world of Nexus Prime. Representatives from 200 species gathered in the Great Hall. Many of them had never seen a human before. Admiral Park entered the hall wearing her full dress uniform. She walked calmly to the speaker's platform while hundreds of alien eyes watched her. Some looked curious. Others looked afraid. The council chairman was a tall, thin creature with blue skin and large eyes. "Admiral Park," he said, "the council is concerned about the events at New Busan. The use of force was excessive." "Excessive?" Park replied. 40 warships attacked a peaceful farming colony. We defended our people. That seems perfectly reasonable to me. "But the destruction was total," another council member said. "Surely negotiation would have been better." Park looked around the hall. "Tell me, counselor, where was this council when our colonists were being bombed? Where were the negotiators when children were hiding in shelters?" The hall was silent. Everyone knew the answer. The council had done nothing because they thought humans were weak. "Let me be clear," Park continued. "Humanity wants peace. We want to trade with our neighbors and explore the galaxy together. But we will not allow our people to be attacked. And if attacked again," the chairman asked, "then we will respond with overwhelming force," Park said. "We've shown you what one of our ships can do. We have many more." Back on the Titan's wrath, Captain Lee was reading reports from across the galaxy. The battle had changed everything. Species that had ignored humanity were now sending diplomatic messages. Trade offers were coming in from dozens of worlds, but there were also threats. Some governments saw humans as a new danger that needed to be stopped before they became too powerful. "Sir," Commander Kim said, "long-range sensors are detecting movement in the Vorthan Empire. They're mobilizing their fleet." Lee wasn't surprised. The Vorthans had been allies of the Kreks. They probably thought they could succeed where the hegemony had failed. Let them come, Lee said. Maybe they'll be smarter than Vextar was. Dr. Choi was monitoring alien communications from her science station. Captain, I'm picking up interesting chatter from the Outer Rim worlds. Several species are asking about joining the human alliance. What alliance? Lee asked. The one they think we're forming, Choi said with a smile. Apparently, half the galaxy believes we're recruiting allies for a war against the major powers. Lee thought about that. Maybe they should be. On New Busan, the colonists had built a monument to the battle. It showed a human fighter pilot protecting a group of children. At the base were the words, "They came when we called." Little Mi Young visited the monument every day. She would leave flowers and talk to the statue. "Thank you for keeping us safe," she would say. The girl didn't know it, but her words were being heard across the galaxy. Humanity had announced itself as a force that would protect the innocent and punish those who harmed them. In his private quarters, Captain Lee looked at Mi Young's drawing that he had framed on his wall. The child had captured something important in her crayon picture. The human fighters really did look like guardian angels, but angels with very big guns. Engineer Kang was deep in the ship, working on modifications to the manufacturing systems. The battle had taught him a lot about what worked and what could be improved. "Sir," he said into his communicator, "I think I can increase fighter production by 30% with some adjustments." "Do it," Lee replied. Because somewhere out there, other enemies were watching and learning. The Kreks had made the mistake of underestimating humanity. The next challenger might be smarter, but they would still make the same fundamental error. They would think that humans were just another species with better technology. They wouldn't understand that humans fought with something no other species had. The absolute determination to protect their own. The galaxy was about to learn what that meant. Admiral Park stood in her flag bridge, looking out at the stars. The human fleet was spreading out to protect all their colonies. The age of being pushed around was over. "Admiral," her aide said, "we're receiving surrender offers from 12 Kreks worlds. Accept them," Park said. "But make it clear that any future attacks on human interest will be met with immediate retaliation." The Kreks' hegemony, which had ruled 60 star systems, was falling apart. Other species were already moving to claim their territory. The galaxy's balance of power had shifted in a single battle, and at the center of it all was the Titan's wrath, floating quietly above New Busan like a sleeping giant. The ship that had changed everything with its hidden swarm of fighters and unlimited manufacturing capability. The aliens had thought they knew humanity's limits. They had been catastrophically wrong. The galaxy would never underestimate humans again.